discuss why my first book that I wrote failed miserably and how I am rebuilding that draft from scratch to write the book that will be published next year, because I will be damned if the book does not publish next year. If you've never been here before, hi, I'm Ash Kyrie. I'm new here too. So welcome. If you like chaos, truth bombs about what it's really like to be a mother and go through the self-publishing journey where you want to see the messy side of what it's like to become an author with real, authentic truths, because let's be real, I am just a mom that's at home with my babies all the time, writing books that come from my own brain and telling you the truth of what it's really like to become an indie author, because it's not all glitz and glamour. And if that is something for you, then go ahead and smash that subscribe button, hit like if you care, and also hit that little post notification so that YouTube actually tells you when I post, because it be flaky sometimes. So let's get into the video and let's learn about how that was a dumpster fire and what I'm doing to rebuild it. Let's talk about what went wrong the first time I wrote a book, because I think it's very simple. And I've said this many times in many videos, and that's because I'm getting new and I'm trying to get you to understand where the F I'm coming from, because you're probably like me and you're sitting on your couch and you're seeing people write books and you're like, I can write a book. You absolutely can. But I want you to actually go into it with the knowledge of understanding that it is not a fairy tale. I know you could probably go to a lot of different authors and talk to them, and some of them will be like, yes, it's absolutely everything. I'm a six-figure author. I make all of these things. And then you have other authors that are like, it's a hobby, not a full-time career, because it really depends on what you do and how you do it. What went wrong the first time I wrote my book? I didn't know story structure. I didn't know character arcs. I didn't know story beats. I didn't know romance beats. I didn't know world building. I didn't know all of the nitty-gritty details that actually go into writing a book. I knew bits and pieces of it. I planned a little bit, but I would say it was very half-assed, if I'm being honest, because I was like, I can write a book. You just type words onto a paper from beginning to end. It's fine. Let me tell you, it's not fine. And if you're a pantser and you can write from beginning to end without a care in the world and get it to a polished book by the end, fantastic for you. I am not one of those, but I am also not a person who can outline in massive details and get from point A to point B, because my brain goes, oh, it's written. After the outline, it's written. We don't even touch it no more. Now we're bored and we need to move on to the next thing. So I'm kind of a mishmash of between the two. I bullet point outline because that's what works for me. And then I extend out a little bit for the parts that I need to. Character arcs absolutely are fleshed out. Characters, I know them inside and out. They are my best friend before I start writing, because otherwise, how do you know what Sally Joe is going to do when the boy next door comes out topless? You don't know unless you know her trauma. Maybe she's going to go run and hide because maybe shirtless men were always a problem. Maybe she's like, dang boy, I want you. You don't know how she's going to react until you know her traumas, her triggers, her story, her backstory. And it doesn't have to be like super extensive, but girl, you got to know her. You got to know who she is. Otherwise, your character's going to fall flat. And also, she needs trauma. She needs flaws. She needs damage. She needs to be ruined. That way you can actually build something that people are going to want to read. Because again, like I've said in previous videos, people are inherently flawed. And if your character does not have flaws, so who are you? A robot? No, thank you. Going into my first draft, I did not know all of that stuff. I also didn't know that you had to edit and edit and edit and edit before you send it to an editor, because otherwise an editor is going to send it back with the sweetest heart ever most of the time and be like, this is trash. There's no actual story here. And then it's going to put you in a mental spiral and you're going to be damaged for 2 years, and you're going to learn and you're going to get stuck in a procrastination learning loop where you don't actually write the book, but you keep learning and you think you're learning more. But really the only way to truly learn is to write the freaking book. First thing that went wrong is I had no idea what I was doing and I just winged it, and that doesn't work. Now, here's the emotional impact of actually learning and restarting, because here's the deal. Someone's going to tell you your book is shit. Even fully published, someone's going to tell you your book is absolute garbage and they hated it. And that's okay, because everyone's entitled to their own opinion. However, there is an emotional thing that happens when an editor goes, this book is trash. You need to start over. Mind you, my editor didn't say it was trash. She just said it needed a lot of work. But it was trash. And you're going to have a mental like, oh my God, I can't write. I can't do this. I suck. I should have never done this in the first place. No, stop. It's happens to every single author, even the best ones. There is parts that need to be fixed, and that is okay. Now, the best part about it is that you go through this emotional thing where when you actually rewrite the book, you start to build more confidence in yourself, and you start to go, oh, I understand what I'm doing. Or when your editor gives feedback, you're like, yes, that actually makes so much more sense to do it that way, because humans need other humans to help build something beautiful. And the emotional impact of starting over is you're getting a whole new fresh start of building something absolutely beautiful that came from your own mind. Imagine when you are in a rut and you're feeling like your book is garbage. Imagine the finish line every single time where when you want to give up, go, no, I'm going to hold my book one day and I'm a published author. I don't care if you write 1 book, 10 book, 20, 100 books. I don't care. Once you have that physical thing in your hand, you're like, oh, I did it. There is so much emotions that come with learning and pouring your heart into something. And if for whatever reason you're stuck in a book and you're like, I just cannot write this the way that I want it to write, it just keeps getting sucky, pause and do a creative writing prompt. Think of a random story idea and just write whatever and make it kind of I like to call them project dumps, where you just pour your heart and soul into something that probably will never see the light of day, but maybe will. But it's just a fun thing to do to get your brain into the mode of writing, because sometimes you need to reset to get away from the project that's like tearing you apart to like get back to it. And that's okay. So just project dump into another book, but don't hyperfixate on that book, and then come back to your original book. Now that I knew that my book was trash and I had to start over and I went through an emotional breakdown, I had to come up with a new strategy. And my new strategy was re-outlining my book from beginning to end, looking at what I had and figuring out what was good and what wasn't good. And my editor told me the first half of your book needs a lot of work, but the second half of your book is really strong. We need to go with that. So let's fix the first half to blend with the second half, and then everything will be fine. That slightly irked me, but I also understood what she meant, because when I wrote the first half of the book, it was a year ago after I had done some learning and I decided to change things up. But then I got failed and just gave up. And then I came back to it and I had another year of learning under my belt. And I was like, I got this. And I also had enough time away from my book that I could see what needed to happen. So my new process was re-outlining, looking at what I had and go, what's salvageable, what's not salvageable, and then fixing that. Then it's writing it, and then it's reading it to make sure that it's good, and it's tweaking it and fixing what your editor says your biggest downfalls are. So for me, it's writing action within dialogue. I have a really hard time going, oh, she flipped the page as she said, blah, 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 blah. And I was sitting in a chair rocking back and forth as so-and-so was running around with a flag in her hand. Whatever that it is, action and dialogue for me is the hardest thing, and I do not understand why, but it is. So working on that, or hey, you use too many M dashes. I'm guilty of them. I love them, but I know that they are to emphasize a thing, but I love them. So I'm working on cutting back on M dashes. And also my character sometimes doesn't react the way that she should, which for some reason, I don't know why. I know exactly who she is, but for some reason, I just write her not having a mental breakdown when she should be having a mental breakdown, because I'm like, oh, she wouldn't do that. In this situation, she would. That is what you do. You take what failed and you rebuild and you go, this didn't work. How do we get from here? And make a new list. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to be trial and error for 50 million years. Okay. You're going to go, this was book, but for this book, that's not working. Like, I know for a fact what I'm doing with my current book is not what I'm doing for my next book, simply because I learned that it doesn't necessarily work the exact way that I want it to with the current book. Like, it works, but it's not really working. So it's figuring out, this doesn't work. What can we do instead? And also going and looking at other people and listening. And 3 people that I absolutely adore, four people that I adore, and I take bits and pieces from all of them to make what works for me, because what they do does not work for me, but bits and pieces of what they do work for me. So it's just building that and just taking the lessons learned. Lesson learned for me is, don't just wing a book and think that it's going to be the best thing ever, because no. Also, the discovery draft, don't send that to your editor. she's going to tell you it's garbage. Take your time and really flesh out your characters and build the world and know the major points of what's going to happen in your story. What happens in the beginning, what happens in the middle, and what happens in the end. And if you don't know how scenes work, learn scenes. Because scenes are just like the story structure themselves. There's a beginning, middle, and end, and a decision that needs to be made at the end of that for each scene. And boy, did I have a hard this time with scenes. I don't know why, but scenes were my kryptonite for the very longest time. I don't understand it, but they were. And just learn and keep trying. And for the love of everything, don't give up, because you do have a story that's worth telling. You thought of it for a reason. And something about that story came to you and needs to be put on paper and needs to be in people's hands. And it's not going to be for everyone, but it's going to be for you. That's the biggest lesson I've learned, is write the book that you want to read, not what everyone else wants to read. Would it be great if other people read it? Yes. Also, something that helps keep my brain from trying to overthink and do too much is think of this as a hobby, not a career. And the reason I say that is because if you think of it as a career, you're going to put way too much pressure on yourself that it might actually derail your progress. Whereas if it's just a hobby, it's doing it on your free time. Also, for the love of all things holy, do not spend your money on things like, I need to get an editor, but you can do a lot of it by yourself. Also, make sure you look around for different editors. I paid a lot for my editor and I am super grateful for her, and it was well worth the money for me. However, there could have been a cheaper way of doing it. And next time I do it, I will do things differently because I have more experience under my belt. But don't try to do everything at one time, because I did everything at one time. I got a little too gung-ho and got a little too excited. It ended up actually derailing me. So take your time, really learn, and make sure that you understand your story inside out, and then put it on paper and understand that it's going to not be good the first time around, but it's okay. It gets better each time. I think I'm on number 10 of my rewrite of the story that I have now. And it's at a spot now where I'm like in love with my story, even though I will not be writing this genre in the future simply because I don't read those books anymore. But this story had to be told and I absolutely love it. And it also kind of has some bleeding in of the genre that I do read. So there's that. But if you have any questions, please drop them below. Or I hope this video helped somebody understand a little bit more. I'm still new to YouTube and don't really know what I'm doing here yet, other than I just want to be upfront and honest about what it's like to become a self-published author from someone with zero experience and has no idea what they're doing. Because a lot of the people on this platform are established or don't ever have the want to self-publish, or they haven't published yet, but they're only talking about like write with me and outline with me. They're not actually sharing the behind the scenes of like it's really like to be an indie author and all the stuff behind it. I'm also a mother, so everything that I do is in the cracks of my life where I can fit it in. So it's a little bit different. And I do have a Substack as well that will be linked below that you can go check out. I'm trying to get better at being consistent everywhere, but I don't know about you, but as a mom, I'm everywhere all the time except where I want to be. But that's a whole other story. So if you enjoyed, please go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you're vibing with me and you want to see my journey of the real raw truth of the messiness, because I'm messy and this is messy, go ahead and tippity tap that notification button so it tells you when I post, and I will catch you in the next chapter with Chaos and Coffee.